Welcome back to the masterclass. In Chapter 1, we completely tore down the passion trap, that well-intentioned but incredibly dangerous lie that tells us to just blindly follow our hearts. Today, we're moving past those traps and handing you the actual diagnostic tools you need to build true career fit. We're going to look at exactly how to translate vague self-awareness into concrete strategic choices. So, if following your passion is basically a trap, what actually works? Well, let's dive into this by introducing what we call the engines of alignment. These are the proven psychological frameworks and self-auditing tools that replace sheer guesswork with real science. Because right now, the global engagement crisis tells us that almost 9 out of 10 people are completely disconnected from their work. They didn't use an engine, they just took a guess. We're going to change that for you today. Here's our roadmap for this explainer. First, the science of matching. Second, Holland's 6 career types. Third, the Visa self-discovery framework. Fourth, the API model. And finally, defining your career dynamics. All right, let's kick things off with part 1, the science of matching. To figure out how we actually match people to jobs, we have to rewind to Frank Parsons. He is basically the grandfather of vocational psychology. Back in 1908, he opened the world's very first career counseling office, and his core philosophy still sits underneath almost every single career assessment you'll take today. Parsons introduced what's called trait factor theory. It simply, but really powerfully, suggests that good career decisions come from understanding 2 things completely separately. First, the person, your specific traits, abilities, and values, and second, the work environment, the actual factors required to do the job. Only then do you look for the optimal match. For example, if you absolutely love organizing details, you hate ambiguity, and you're highly analytical, trait factor theory points you towards structured roles like auditing or data quality management. It stops you from throwing yourself into a job that requires constant chaotic improvisation. It's the foundational logic of matching. Moving right along to part 2, Holland's 6 career types. Now, if Parsons gave us the theory, John Holland gave us the vocabulary. He categorized both people and work environments into 6 distinct types. What Holland proved is that career satisfaction tends to be highest when there is congruence, meaning a really tight match between your internal type and your external environment. So say you score high in investigative and artistic. Well, you might absolutely thrive in a role that combines analysis and creativity, like UX research or data storytelling. Or if you're conventional and enterprising, you're likely going to crush it in project management or sales operations. This model literally gives you a language for your preferences. Which brings us to part 3, the Visa self-discovery framework. Holland's theory is fantastic for the big picture, but Visa is your micro-level personal diagnostic checklist. This is where you put yourself under the microscope. You start with values. What actually motivates you? Are you strictly against animal testing? If so, you definitely shouldn't work for a cosmetics lab that tests on animals. But the really crucial point here is the I, interests. Exploring interests isn't just about trying to turn your weekend baking hobby into a full-time job. It's about understanding how you naturally prefer to think and work. It's looking at what you have a lot of patience for, what you naturally read about online, and then finding a work environment that rewards that specific type of curiosity. Then you map all of that to your strengths, the core skills that help you actually get the job done. But we really need to pause on the A in Visa, areas for improvement. Look, we are all works in progress. To find true alignment, you have to actively seek out feedback. And this brilliantly highlights a massive psychological hurdle, because giving and receiving feedback is a remarkably rare skill. When someone tells you what you could have done better on a project, your immediate knee-jerk instinct is to protect your ego. You want to justify your actions. But if you get defensive, you automatically close yourself off to the exact insights you need to actually progress in your career. You literally have to turn off your ego to build that alignment. Okay, let's jump into part 4, the API model, aptitude, personality, and interest. While Visa helps you understand your internal drivers, API forces you to look at whether you can actually survive the reality of a profession. API requires you to match your aptitude, your personality, and your interest to the harsh realities of a job. Let's take a police officer as an example. You might have a massive interest in fighting crime because you've watched a ton of movies. You might even have the physical aptitude for it. But you absolutely cannot thrive as a police officer without the specific personality traits of intense discipline, emotional stability, and strict punctuality. If your personality is highly chaotic and anti-authority, you will fail in that environment no matter how much you love the idea of the job. API forces you to be brutally honest about who you actually are. Finally, we arrive at part 5, Defining your career dynamics. Once you understand your internal gears, you have to evaluate the external work environment. We do this using the DDS framework: duration, dynamism, and stability. Let's start with duration. Are you looking at a short-term or long-term path? You have to be totally honest with yourself about your patience here. Do you actually have the stamina for an 11 to 12-year medical journey filled with relentless studying and residencies? Or do you thrive on quick execution? Maybe you prefer a 3 to 6 month skill-based route, like learning digital marketing or video editing, so you can start earning and building immediately. Neither path is wrong, but choosing the wrong duration for your personality, that will lead to massive burnout. Next up, we pit a stable career against a dynamic career. This right here is the ultimate trade-off in the modern workforce. A stable role, like a traditional corporate banking job, offers predictable hours, your weekends off, lower stress, and a clear work-life balance. But it often comes with strict income limits and slower progression. A dynamic career, on the other hand, means no fixed hours. You might be working night shifts, weekends, just hustling 24/7. It demands incredible resilience, but it offers uncapped growth based purely on your own effort. You have to decide which trade-off you're actually willing to live with. So, the big takeaway here is that matching isn't just about the work itself. You aren't just picking a shiny job title off a shelf. You are choosing a very specific combination of aptitude, personality, and interest, and you're locking it into a specific duration, dynamism, and stability. True career alignment is about making absolutely sure your internal identity can survive the specific, unglamorous daily conditions of that external environment. When you start actively applying these concepts, person's trait factor, Holland's RIASEC hexagon, the visa framework, and the API model, everything changes. You stop being a passive participant in your own life. You stop letting societal pressure, parental expectations, or just sheer guesswork dictate your story. Instead, you step into the driver's seat. You decide your own destiny. You decide your own path, because you finally have the tools to engineer it. You've built the engine. You've found alignment for who you are right now. But that brings us to a terrifying, totally inevitable reality. You are going to change. If you build a rigid career based only on who you are today, you are essentially building a cage for your future self. So how do you prepare for a career that doesn't just fit you now, but actually evolves with you over a lifetime? We will tackle exactly that in Chapter 3, the Lifespan Blueprint. I'll see you there.